It was the night of their anniversary. Not mine, of course. Mine had faded into the cracks of time long ago, like the photographs they never cared to frame. No, this night was for my son and his wife. A grand celebration in my own house, cooked in my own kitchen. Under the fairy lights, I'd strung myself along the porch railings, though no one seemed to remember that. I had spent the afternoon in quiet, methodical joy, wrapping a small box with paper I had saved from a festival years ago. The gift was grandiose, a delicate pair of hand-stitched silk napkins, embroidered with golden thread. I had sewn them myself. My fingers ached from the work, but there was love in every stitch. Not expensive, no, but meaningful. My grandmother taught me those patterns. I had kept them safe for years, waiting for the right moment to pass them down. Dinner was loud, too loud. Laughter without warmth, glasses clinking without sincerity. My daughter-in-law wore a dress that shimmered like it cost more than my monthly pension. My son barely met my eyes all night. Maybe he was just tired. Or maybe he'd already begun forgetting the woman who once held his fevered head against her chest all night while praying silently for his life. When I handed her the small box, her nails tapped it like it was contaminated. She smiled, that thin, fake kind of smile you give to a child who brings you weeds instead of flowers. "What's this?" she asked, too loud. "A little something I made for your home." She unwrapped it slowly, deliberately, drawing eyes from across the table. And when she saw what was inside, she laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, wow, napkins." She looked at my son and raised her eyebrows. "Handmade." He said nothing. She turned to me, holding them between two fingers like tissue pulled from the trash. Well, I'm sure they were fashionable in the 1800s. Someone at the table chuckled. I didn't look to see who then. She stood, walked to the kitchen bin, and dropped them in. Just like that. In front of everyone. As if what I had spent hours making was a thing to be thrown away like me. I stared at the empty box in my hands. I waited for my son to say something. Anything. But all he did was pour her another glass of wine. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't tell her that those napkins were stitched from the last piece of my wedding sari. I didn't tell her that the thread was bought with the money I had saved from skipping medicine that month. I just stood up. The party noise faded behind me like an old radio tuning out. I walked down the hall, past the photos they never dusted, past the flowers I had arranged myself, past the living room, where she had once told me, "We don't need you to hover. Please respect our space." I didn't slam the door. I didn't shout. But something inside me, something soft, folded shut forever that night. I closed the door to my bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed I had shared with my late husband, and looked at the clock. The second hand ticked on, but something in me stopped. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I simply walked away. The house creaked differently now, as if the wood had grown tired of pretending to hold joy in its bones. It used to hum with life. Little feet slapping against cool tiles, a kettle whistling, my husband's deep voice asking where his slippers were. Now, the same floors echoed hollow, and the kettle screamed too loud in the silence. Every corner held a memory. I didn't need photo frames. The house itself was my album. The stain on the ceiling above the dining table, that was from the time Samir had decided to throw his birthday cake into the air, declaring himself king of the house. He was 4. I had scolded him with a smile I couldn't hide. That patched wall in the hallway, That was where Arif had ridden his tricycle too fast and left a dent with his head. We laughed only after the tears dried. I didn't fix it fully. Left it there like a memory fossil. The garden once bloomed, with my husband's favorites, jasmine, marigold, and those wild white daisies he always claimed grew best when I talked to them. I did. I really did. Every morning. Now the weeds had started winning. I remember holding their tiny hands as we planted trees. I told them trees were promises. If you care for them, I said, they'll grow taller than us and protect this house long after we're gone. My sons believed me then. But promises are fragile when roots are shallow. We built this house brick by brick, not just with cement and stone, but with stolen sleep, skipped meals, and dreams deferred. My husband and I used to sit on the unfinished floor, calculating bills with trembling hands, but laughing anyway. He'd tell me, one day, they'll bring their children here, and we'll have room for everyone. He didn't live long enough to see it finished. But I did. I saw my son bring his bride through that door, her eyes judging the curtains, the color of the tiles, the smell of spices. I saw her change everything. The cushions I embroidered, the lamp my husband wired by hand, even the rug my sister gave as a wedding gift. Bit by bit, she stripped the house of anything that remembered me. And yet, I stayed quiet. I told myself this is what mothers do, make space, even if it means becoming invisible. But invisibility grows teeth, and one day it bites. The room where we once celebrated every exam result, every scraped knee, every homecoming, it had become their private office. A no disturbance zone. I tiptoed in my own home like a maid afraid of being fired. And when guests came, I was her, never Emmy. She just lives with us, she'd say lightly. As if I were an accessory, the house came with like old wallpaper you can't remove. Even the furniture seemed confused now. The sofa where I held my son after his first heartbreak now carried strangers, bags, and heels. The kitchen, once fragrant with cardamom and cumin, now smelled of cold coffee and silence. I whispered to the walls sometimes, hoping they remembered me, hoping they missed the laughter too. But houses don't weep. They wait. Like old mothers. It used to be filled with love. Now it only remembered me. I didn't become a mother in the delivery room. I became one in the small moments no one applauded. When I stayed awake for nights, steaming fever from little brows, with cloth soaked in rose water. When I fed them before myself, every time. When I gave up a new sari because they needed books. They were not raised with luxury, but they never felt lack. My husband and I made sure of it. We turned one salary into 3 mouths fed, 5 school uniforms stitched from one old bedsheet, and 100 dreams spun from threadbare nights. I remember selling my gold bangles, the ones my mother gave me to pay Samir's university admission. I lied to him, said I didn't like wearing gold anymore. He believed me. He hugged me so tight that day. I still remember how his tears soaked my shoulder when he got the scholarship letter. And Arif, oh, Arif, the softest of them, the one who used to bring me crushed flowers from the street and say, one day I'll buy you a real garden. I sewed his graduation. Coulda, myself. He looked so proud that day, as if the world had finally caught up with the boy I always knew was special. I gave them more than a mother's love. I gave them permission to fly, even when my own wings ached from holding on. I encouraged them to leave the town, to chase their dreams in cities that didn't know our name. And when they stopped calling, I forgave it. Busy lives, I told myself. Important work. I cut pieces of myself to patch their lives without ever letting them see the seams. And now, they look at me like I'm the burden, an old voice they've outgrown, a relic from a past they're embarrassed of. It's not the forgetting that hurts, it's the rewriting. They tell people, we struggled, we built everything from scratch. From scratch? Was my husband's bent spine not the foundation? Was my sleepless youth not the cement? And then came the wedding. I poured savings into it, not because they asked, but because I believed that love should be celebrated. I wore my best, smiled the widest, gave her the family heirloom bangles. She said, "These look old-fashioned." Me, and never wore them again. I ignored the way she flinched when I entered their room without knocking. I swallowed her sharp tone when she said, "This is our home now, not a museum." I even laughed when she joked to her friends, "She's sweet, but old people don't understand boundaries." I tried to understand. I truly did. But understanding turned into erasing, and patience turned into silence, until there was nothing left but me, watching my love become a forgotten language. I didn't just give them money, meals, or memories. I gave them versions of myself I'll never get back. The strong mother, the proud wife, the forgiving woman. And they took it all. Every piece. Every proof. They didn't just take what was mine. They took what I built for them. It started with a misplaced receipt, just a crumpled piece of paper that had fallen behind the cupboard in the guest room. I bent to pick it up one morning, dusting absent-mindedly, the way old hands keep working even when no one notices. It was from a jewelry store. Not unusual until I saw the date. It was the same week they had borrowed money from me, said their car had broken down, and they couldn't make rent. The amount on the receipt was twice what they'd asked from me. And the name, hers, not even his. Something in my chest shifted that day. Not broke, just turned, like a lock clicking open. I waited. I watched. I began opening drawers I had once avoided, not because I didn't trust them, but because I wanted to believe I was safe in my own home. The bank letters were the first to make my hands tremble. There were accounts I didn't recognize, withdrawals that didn't match anything I remembered authorizing. Then came the electricity bills, not for our address. Another flat, downtown, high-end. I remembered vaguely when they said they were helping a friend temporarily, but the lease, it was in my name. Signed, stamped. I had no memory of that signature, though it looked frighteningly like mine. I went to the bank in secret, asked them for all statements under my name. The young man behind the counter looked surprised, then concerned. "Ma'am," he said, "have you not been monitoring these transfers?" "What transfers?" I asked quietly. He printed them, page after page. Money moved, little by little, each month, always just enough to stay unnoticed. But over the years, it was more than enough to break a person's back. I took the papers home and laid them on the dining table, the same one where we used to cut birthday cakes and write school projects. Now it looked like a war room. I searched more. The old cabinet where I had once kept wedding albums and insurance files now held the last pieces of my trust. I found copies of documents, my pension redirected, a will I never signed, a forged letter granting access to my medical records and decision-making power. She had been planning, not in rage, not in panic, but in calculation. The girl I once hugged like a daughter had turned me into an account to to be drained. And my son had known. His signature was there, too, right next to hers. He didn't stop it, he helped it. I sat in my room that night, with every light turned off. Not crying, not shaking, just still. People think betrayal feels like fire. But no. It's ice. Cold, creeping ice that starts at your fingers and moves inwards until even your heartbeat slows to silence. But I didn't scream. I didn't storm into their room with evidence and fury. I just folded the papers, placed them in a neat envelope, and slid it into the back of my cupboard, behind the winter shawls. Because now I was watching, and I was remembering. They thought I was weak. They forgot who taught them strength. The morning after I discovered everything, I brewed my tea the same way I always did, 2 spoons. No sugar, just the way your nerves stay sharp. The spoon clinked against the cup like it was tapping me awake, whispering, "No more tears, no more waiting." I didn't feel like a mother that day. I felt like a soldier coming out of hibernation. I opened the cupboard and pulled out the envelope, the one filled with documents, signatures, betrayal. I laid them out again, not to feel pain this time, but to prepare. I needed someone who remembered me not as a burden, but as a woman with a mind. That's when I thought of Fatima. We hadn't spoken in years. Life and motherhood had taken us down different roads, but I knew if anyone could understand what silence hides, it was her. She was a retired lawyer now, still sharp, still no nonsense. I called her that afternoon. "I was wondering when you'd remember you were a lioness," she said, without even a hello. I met her the next day, files in hand. We sat across from each other in her small study, the walls lined with dusty legal books and her late husband's medals. She read everything slowly, her finger gliding beneath each line, like a surgeon preparing for incision. "They've underestimated you," she finally said, eyes meeting mine. "Let's keep it that way." We began building quietly, a case, a defense, a trap, if needed. Not criminal, not yet, but the kind of pressure that made liars sweat and thieves blink. She showed me how to freeze accounts, how to update power of attorney, how to trace hidden assets. We even drafted a new will, this time written with a hand that didn't shake. And then I waited, not passively, patiently. I started smiling again, not for them, but for me. I cooked quietly, nodded when they spoke, listened when they lied. They thought I had gone back to being soft. But softness is often mistaken for surrender by those who've never met storms in silence. At night, I wrote letters, not to them, to myself. Reminders of who I once was. A girl who climbed mango trees. A woman who ran a household with her bare hands. A mother who built empires out of ration cards and wedding saris. I placed each letter in the folds of my shawls, behind books, under the bed, so if I ever forgot again, the house would whisper back my own strength. The shift inside me was quiet, no rage, no explosion, just stillness. Like when the ocean stops moving, and you realize it's preparing to rise. The control they stole from me, I took back, not in noise, but in structure. I became deliberate in everything. My words, my steps, my silence. I stopped seeking apology. I started expecting consequences. My husband once said, "Power isn't how loud you speak. It's how still everyone else becomes when you do." Now, when I passed them in the hall, I no longer avoided eye contact. I held it, calm, steady, unreadable. They didn't know yet, but I did. Revenge is loud only when done by fools. Mine would be silent. It didn't happen all at once. No thunder, no collapse. Just small cracks spreading quietly like hairline fractures in fine china. At first, it was the phone calls, whispers behind closed doors. Her voice tighter than usual. His footsteps pacing the hallway after midnight. The smell of ashtray stress in the air. Something was slipping. They thought I didn't notice, but I've watched children learn to walk. I know how to read silent stumbles. She stopped posting her perfect life online. No more curated dinners. No blessed captions. No matching outfits on the front porch I built with my own hands. Only silence. Then came the mail thicker envelopes. Government stamps. One from the bank. Another from the property office. I saw her tear them open with hands that used to hold wine glasses like royalty. She didn't even look my way as she stuffed them into the bin, but I saw the edges weren't torn. They were shaking. I overheard things, not intentionally, just the way wind carries secrets through old corridors. She said we don't qualify anymore. They froze that account too. You promised you checked everything and then, finally, what if she knows? I would be in the kitchen, washing the same cup for the third time, pretending to hum an old lullaby no one remembered but me. She started waking up late. Hair uncombed, eyes puffy, the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. And my son, his shoulders sank lower every day. That confident swagger, the one that once made me proud, now looked like a man carrying debts he couldn't count anymore. I didn't gloat. I didn't interrupt. I simply tended to my garden. The same one they once mocked. Why do you still grow your own vegetables? Just get groceries delivered. Now, I handed them fresh tomatoes without a word. Watched them accept them with forced smiles. Too proud to say thank you. Too hungry to refuse. She snapped at the maid one day. Over nothing. A spoon out of place. The echo of her rage bounced down the hallway like a broken bell. I closed my door gently. Let the storm rage outside. I had become a mirror they no longer wanted to see. And mirrors, when cracked, don't break. They reflect deeper. The lawyer called to confirm another freeze had gone through. Quietly, precisely. Just enough to tighten the rope, not snap it, Fatima said. They'll feel the walls closing in before they realize who built them. I didn't need revenge to be poetic. I needed it to be patient, like drought. Slow, devastating, invisible until too late. Some nights I heard them argue in the living room. Words like inheritance, entitlement, why isn't it enough, floated through the vents like smoke from a dying fire. And me. I sat on the porch, watching the sky shift colors, drinking tea that tasted like peace. I didn't call anyone. I didn't write them out of my will, because they were never really in it. Not in the way that mattered. What I had built was never theirs to claim, only to prove themselves worthy of. They stopped speaking to me directly. Guilt is louder than silence, and silence is a language I speak fluently. They avoided my eyes, avoided my space, as if I had become something sacred or haunted. Let them think what they wanted. They thought I disappeared. I was watching from the shadows. The knock came late in the evening. That kind of knock that doesn't demand attention. It asks for mercy. 3 soft taps. A pause. Then one more. As if whoever stood on the other side wasn't sure if they deserved to be let in. I didn't rush. I took my time, folding the shawl over my shoulders, smoothing its creases like I had done 1,000 times before when preparing to face life's colder moments. When I opened the door, they were both standing there. My son's eyes were darker than I remembered, sleepless, sunken. Her lipstick was smudged, cheeks pale beneath powder. She was holding a Tupperware box, empty. I could tell. Just something to hold. "Amy," he said, voice cracking mid-word. "Can we come in?" I didn't move, just stepped aside. They entered like strangers, slowly, cautiously. She looked around the room, like it might judge her, and perhaps it did. The couch she once called outdated now looked like a throne she didn't deserve to sit on, but she did anyway. He remained standing, shifting weight from one foot to the other, like a child who'd broken something and didn't know how to confess. "How are you feeling these days?" she asked. Her voice was soft, careful, too careful. "I'm well," I replied, without looking up from my knitting. I hadn't touched the thread all day, but I wanted my hands to be busy. Idle hands invite emotion. He cleared his throat. "We were just thinking. Maybe it's been hard, you know, with the accounts and stuff. Maybe things got confused." She cut in quickly. "Maybe we didn't handle things the right way. But we've been under so much stress, Emmy. You don't know what it is like out there." I looked at her hands, clasped, shaking, fake, a ring missing from her finger. "We thought," he tried again, "if we could just talk, just go over everything together again. Maybe you could reconsider your silence lately," she added. "It's been so hard on us. We care about you. We really do." I smiled politely, not cold, just absent. She sniffed, suddenly, reaching into her bag for a tissue she didn't use. "We miss how things used to be. You were always like a mother to me." I didn't say I was your mother. I didn't say you threw that title away with my gift. Instead, I reached for my cup of tea and took a slow sip. The sound of it filled the silence between us like a judgment. They went on, voices trembling between apology and agenda, her tone rising just a touch too high when she mentioned the will, his throat tightening when he brought up how family should stick together. They thought they were weaving words like a net, that I would fall into it again, tangled in their grief, baited by guilt. But I had learned that some voices aren't meant to be trusted, and some tears aren't water, they're strategy. I let them speak, let them try. I didn't interrupt. I didn't soothe. I didn't save. They fumbled through their performance, eyes darting to my expressionless face, hoping for a sign, a crack, a sigh, a softening. But I gave them nothing, only stillness, only silence. I listened, not to forgive, but to remember their tone. The next evening, I laid the table not with food, with truth. I brought out the envelope, the same one they didn't know existed, placed it in the center like a quiet invitation to war. The house was still. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly. My shawl rested on the arm of my chair, just as I had folded it. Nothing was rushed. When they arrived, I welcomed them in, not with warmth, not with coldness either, just neutrality, like the kind a judge offers before delivering a sentence. They sat hesitantly. He looked around, confused by the absence of tea. She adjusted her sleeve twice in 5 minutes. Her wedding ring was back on. A show of stability, perhaps. "I found some papers," I began, tone steady. Some things you may have forgotten to tell me, she